The Ica Desert in southern Peru is in severe collapse. With rainfall of less than 2 millimeters per year, this place is being desertified at the most serious rate in history because of one enormous ecological mistake made by humans. Groundwater veins are collapsing, the land is turning saline. Thousands of hectares are becoming dust and sand. Billion-dollar technological megaprojects, giant water pumping systems, and desalination plants have all proved powerless against the destructive force of nature. At the exact moment, hydrologists declared that this land had completely lost the ability to recover. A biological revolution shocked the world. An army of primitive grazing animals is rebuilding the hydrological cycle, reawakening underground water veins, and forcing desertification to retreat at zero cost. More than 1,000 years ago, the Nazca civilization lived and drew gigantic designs across the sand in this very harsh land. They respected the desert, but the globalized economy of the 21st century did not. Ica is one of the driest places on the planet, yet it was turned into a giant, intensive agricultural factory. Large corporations transformed this desert into one of the world's leading export zones for asparagus and grapes. This is an extreme ecological paradox. According to global hydrological data, producing 1 kilogram of asparagus requires more than 2,000 liters of water. Humans are growing some of the thirstiest crops in one of the driest places on Earth. The result was a biological catastrophe. Thousands of wells pierced through the bedrock, draining groundwater reserves that had existed for tens of thousands of years, at a rate 150 times faster than nature could replenish them. As the water disappeared, geological structure collapsed with it. The ground cracked open, and land subsidence swallowed farms. Chemical fertilizer and pesticides accumulated, turning the remaining soil into poisonous crusts of salt. The ecosystem was completely destroyed. Native food chains were severed. Degraded soil could no longer retain water, allowing desert winds to carry away the topsoil and create sandstorms that swallowed every attempt at cultivation. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations once warned that Ica was approaching a point of no return, where life would never be able to return before 2040. The world seemed helpless. But ecologists found a loophole in this destruction. They decided to unleash a biological solution that had been forgotten for 500 years. When facing dry and degraded soil, bringing livestock such as cattle or sheep into the desert would have been the next destructive step. Cattle have sharp hooves. They compress the fragile topsoil so tightly that water cannot seep downward. Their teeth rip grass out by the roots, completely destroying vegetation. That was when the project to return humpless camelids to the Ica Desert was activated. Not for meat, not for wool, but to serve as ecological engineers. From an evolutionary biology perspective, humpless camelids are a perfect machine for survival and restoration. They belong to the group of padded foot animals. Instead of hard hooves, they have soft flesh pads beneath their feet. Their weight is spread evenly. As they move across the desert, they do not compact the soil. On the contrary, their gentle footsteps act like a microscopic plow, breaking the hardened crust on the surface and allowing oxygen and seeds to slip into the soil below. The way they eat is also an ecological act of genius. Their split lips and special teeth allow them to cut only the tops of plants without ever pulling out the roots. This stimulates the grass and shrubs to grow back more vigorously in the next cycle. But their true power lies in their waste. One adult, humpless camelid releases manure rich in nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium in nearly perfect proportions. Their dung contains billions of beneficial soil bacteria and, most importantly, they do not release the massive quantities of methane that cattle do. In desert conditions, these pellets dry out and act like tiny sponges. When the rare fog droplets drift in from the Pacific Ocean, camelid dung absorbs the moisture and creates a miniature incubator for native seeds to germinate. They do not demand industrial feed, and they do not need to consume hundreds of liters of water every day. They move across the desert, scattering life through their footsteps and their waste. And right here, a biological chain reaction exploded, creating a result that no hydrologist could have predicted. In only a few biological cycles, the presence of the camelid herd triggered an explosion of life. Where there had once been only dust and sand, the roots of native grasses gripped the soil firmly, protected by camelid manure. As vegetation appeared, a physical phenomenon called a microclimate began to form. The plant cover blocked direct sunlight from striking the ground, reducing surface temperature by 5 to 10 degrees Celsius. Lower temperature reduced water evaporation. Immediately, the broken food chain began reconnecting. Pollinating insects such as solitary bees and beetles were drawn to the new vegetation. Following the insects came the return of migratory birds, desert lizards, and rodents. Most importantly, the waste of grazing animals attracted dung beetles, insects that dig burrows and continue carrying nutrients deep into the soil, creating natural channels for water to seep downward. The increase in these prey species then drew top regional predators, such as the Andean fox and birds of prey. The ecosystem had begun re-establishing its own defense network. But the most shocking event was not happening above ground. It was happening below. By restoring the vegetation cover, plant roots began functioning like a soil anchoring system. Instead of rainwater or fog moisture evaporating or rushing across the surface in useless flash floods, the water was now guided by plant roots and loosened soil directly into the underground aquifers. Wells that had been dry for 20 years in communities around Ica suddenly began holding water again. No pipelines hundreds of kilometers long were needed. No pumps consuming millions of kilowatt-hours of electricity were required. The recovery of groundwater was being driven entirely by the vegetation system activated by the humpless camelids themselves. This capacity to regenerate the hydrological cycle sent shockwaves through the global academic world. The battle in Ica is not only about the survival of one desert, it is reshaping a gigantic geopolitical contest of the 21st century, the struggle for water. Across the world, desertification is erasing 12 million hectares of land every year, devastating the global economy by trillions of dollars. Water has become the blue gold that shapes the power of nations. The United Nations forecasts that by 2050, the world will have hundreds of millions of refugees driven by water scarcity. In desperate response, nations are pouring money into artificial environmental intervention technologies, building giant dams, manipulating weather, desalinating seawater. A clear example is California's Central Valley in the United States. That region once spent billions of dollars drilling super wells thousands of meters deep and applying unmanned aerial devices to agriculture. Yet, when groundwater was exhausted, that high-technology agricultural model faced collapse, causing severe land subsidence visible directly from space. The overuse of technology to interfere with natural systems produced environmental consequences no one could fully predict. But the Ica phenomenon proves one brutal truth: human technology is only trying to control nature, while native animals know how to heal it. The animal ecological engineering model from Peru is becoming the ultimate blueprint, now being studied by other nations. The core principles from the reintroduction of humpless camelids are being evaluated for use in other harsh environments. This is not unlike the ecological miracle that happened on the Loess Plateau in China. From an area deeply degraded and severely eroded by overexploitation, the application of natural grazing combined with native vegetation recovery re-greened the entire territory and improved the regional microclimate. Similarly, at Pleistocene Park in Siberia, Russia, the return of wild horses and bison is helping compact the snow layer, protecting permafrost from melting, and thereby preventing large amounts of greenhouse gases from being released into the atmosphere. In the Atacama Desert of Chile, the driest desert in the world, experts are evaluating the use of camelid species to slow erosion. In the arid regions of Australia, scientists are working to reintroduce native marsupials with digging behavior. Their movement and foraging activity help till and restore topsoil degraded after large-scale wildfire events, creating ideal conditions for plant seeds to germinate. What makes this strategy so extraordinary is that the cost is almost zero. Nature has already optimized the genetic code of these animals through millions of years of evolution to sustain life. We do not need to invent an expensive machine to restore the desert. That machine already exists. It has fur, it has a heartbeat, and it is walking across the sand. However, the power of the humpless camelid herd does not stop at restoring biodiversity. They are now unintentionally igniting a revolution in the global economy, the climate resilience economy. We are entering a brutal ecological war, one in which global financial instruments are beginning to pivot. The carbon credit market, a gigantic system worth nearly $1 trillion, is now turning its attention toward deserts. For many decades, scientists believed that only tropical forests, such as the Amazon, had the capacity to absorb massive volumes of carbon dioxide. But the latest research from global ecological institutes has overturned that view. Arid desert regions, if their soil, microbiome, and root networks are restored, can become enormous underground carbon storage vaults. This environment may even provide safer long-term storage than tropical forests, because the land surface is rarely exposed to the threat of wildfire. As the humpless camelid herds move across Ica and restore vegetation cover, they are unintentionally transforming a useless strip of sand into a great carbon-drawing machine. Comparative data shows that 1 hectare of desert restored ecologically through grazing animals can capture an amount of carbon equal to that of dozens of expensive artificial air filter systems. Even today's direct carbon capture technologies, which cost millions of dollars, struggle to match the efficiency and cost-effectiveness of a biological carbon storage model built on grazing animals. At the same time, this reversal is a direct challenge to the model of high-technology agriculture that exhausts natural resources. Transnational agricultural corporations once took pride in their automated drip irrigation, pesticide-spraying drones, and climate-controlled greenhouses. But once groundwater disappears, even the most advanced technologies instantly become worthless. Meanwhile, the wild ecosystem rebuilt by camelids survives record-breaking droughts through self-regulation and the strength of soil microorganisms. This contrast is rewriting the rules of global food security. Any agricultural system that tries to break the natural cycle through machinery and chemicals will eventually collapse. Ecology is not a decorative science. It is the living infrastructure of the world economy. From an ecological disaster caused by the bottomless greed of industrial agriculture, the Ica Desert reached the very bottom of destruction. But at that deepest point of despair, nature delivered its most forceful answer. These humpless camelids are not merely sowing green life across the sand, they are healing a broken hydrological system, drawing native predators back, restoring the order of the food chain, and providing a biological shield against climate change. Their presence is a declaration of one truth: humans cannot use machines to create life. Life can only be nurtured by life itself. For the past 2 centuries, humanity has suffered from one grave error of perception: the arrogance of the dominant species. Human beings have spent decades and vast budgets building complex mechanical systems to control the natural environment. They have extracted resources to exhaustion in order to maintain economic growth indicators. Yet, all artificial infrastructure becomes meaningless the moment Earth's ecological circulation loses its balance. The real lesson from the camelid herds in the Peruvian desert goes far beyond biology. It is a profound lesson in how to operate alongside natural laws instead of trying to control them. The greatest intelligence does not lie in complex algorithms created by humans, but in the silent evolution of wild animals over millions of years. Nature had every answer before we were even capable of asking the question. Only when we cast aside our arrogant ego, step back, and return the role to the true inhabitants of Earth does the world begin to heal itself. The ecological battle in Ica has now turned around, and as the world enters an era of resource scarcity, perhaps the power capable of saving humanity does not lie in the most advanced laboratories, but in the patient silence of an ancient animal species. What do you think about this extraordinary ecological reversal? Should humanity stop depending entirely on artificial technological solutions and hand the recovery of Earth back to native biological systems? Leave your opinion in the comments below, press like, and subscribe to the channel so we can keep decoding the fiercest and most mysterious ecological battles on the planet together. Do not forget to share this video if you support sustainable ecological restoration solutions. See you again in the next videos.